And repeat after me. I take refuge in the Buddha. I take refuge in the Dharma. I take refuge in the Sangha. Keeping the palms joined. Put the palms down. All right. Good evening. Nice to see you all here and our millions of YouTube followers. It's funny, we were just going through kind of organizing some old temple files and things like that, going back to 2007. And literally just looking at stuff from like 2009. And so my head was just kind of thinking about the early days, what it was like downtown. And then we come here, and it's a Wednesday night before Thanksgiving, and there's just a couple of us sitting here. And I remember when we began, it's still the same now, but similar to a question that somebody asked last night about like how do you keep from getting bored? And to me, when I heard that, it was really around like how do you stay motivated with the practice, for myself and to share it. But thinking of downtown in the early days when, we were packed in this small little place and a few people would show up and we were just so excited that people were there. It didn't matter how many were there. It didn't matter if it was 2 people or if it was, we never had 1,000 people there, but it never mattered how many people were there. We were just simply excited to sit and share the practice with each other. And for me, when I first arrived in Taiwan, and there was a nun who said to me, never forget, and it's one of those things where I'm convinced that, sort of convinced, I hadn't slept in like 48 hours from travel. And I saw her at the bottom of this mountain as we're heading into the monastery. And so I'm still not sure if she was real or if she just was like a figment of my imagination after no sleep for 2 days. But she asked me what I was doing there, and I, explained to her. And the nun said, never forget your first intention of why you showed up here. And that teaching has stayed with me to this day. Meaning that, and we had a conversation, very brief after that, and then she was gone. I never saw her again. No idea who she was. But it is something I've come back to a lot because it's always reminded me that no matter how good life may seem or how bad life may seem or whatever words you want to use, always remember your original intention as to why you show up, meaning why practice, why do meditation, why learn about Buddhism, why be around a community. Like, don't forget those reasons. Because as you continue to practice and things evolve, you may lose sight of all of that. And, over the years, it's happened a lot here where we see people, when things are going well in their life, that's when we typically don't see people. So like, I'm good. I got through my rough patch and now I'm okay. And we don't see them for a year or 2 years, and then they show up. It's like, I haven't seen you in a while. And they're like, yeah, I lost my job, lost my relationship, I lost my whatever. And so people cycle back through. And for me, that teaching of never forget the original intention is always just a reminder that we practice not because things are good or bad. We practice because it's important to just continue to practice. By practice, meaning meditation and exploring the nature of your own mind. Because we already know throughout our entire lives, we're going to face some ups and downs and difficulties. So, so just having a nice small little group here, a few of us, and thinking about the downtown temple when we started, like we were just so excited that anybody was there, and that feeling is the same. Like that has never, for me as a practitioner, I've never lost that. There's still that excitement to just like, wow, people show up. It's still really beautiful to see. So I appreciate you showing up. And to our millions of fans, Gene, I knew you would be here virtually. So, we went through with the class mainly because I knew Gene would be online, and if we weren't here, Gene would have been really disappointed and sent us nasty hate mail. So I appreciate you showing up. So we'll start with a meditation practice. A couple things to tell you before we begin. Nothing's going to happen to you. You're not going to float away. You're not going to have any mystical, magical experiences. The mind won't shut off, won't stop racing. You won't think nothing. We're just going to sit and breathe. Posture, you just want to settle into whatever's comfortable. Relaxing the shoulders, hands can be on the knees or the lap, whatever's comfortable for you. If you need to move, simply move. I'll guide us as we begin, and we'll settle into a little bit of silence. And starting with the eyes closed if comfortable, or slightly open. Mouth is open or closed. We'll start with taking 3 deep breaths, slowly. And eventually, settle into a natural rhythm of the breath. Noticing the mind as it wanders, jumping from thought to thought. Start with gently guiding the attention, focus to the stomach or chest. Breathing in, feel them rise. Breathing out, they fall. Simply continue this practice. Observing sensation of breath. Expecting nothing but to sit and breathe. As the mind wanders, lost in thought, recognize it. Release that thought. Return attention, focus to the breath. Breathing in, follow breath in. Breathing out, follow breath out. letting go of expectations, letting go of judgments from the practice. Just sitting, breathing. Learning to be comfortable in stillness, in quiet, just sitting, breathing. with the body still, resting. Speech, quiet, aware of all sound. And the mind, learning to settle. Know what it's like to just sit and breathe. Knowing with each breath, there's nothing else to do. Nowhere else to go. And no one else to be. Everything beautiful, exactly as it is. Sitting, breathing. Once again, taking 3 deep breaths, slowly. And slowly opening the eyes. Slowly beginning to move. And most important, the practice of meditation is to recognize how you feel now, immediately after. Compare this to how you typically feel throughout your day. Recognize the difference, if there is one. Ask yourselves how you prefer to feel every day for the rest of your life. Realize how you feel now if it's quiet, calm and still, or a busy mind, racing mind, whatever you're sitting with at this moment. It's nothing to do with anything I said. It's not from how we sit and hold the hands or cross the legs. It's not from the sounds around us or anything else for that matter. It's everything to do with your own mind and your own mind's reaction to an external condition. This is what the Buddha called pratitya samutpatti. It means dependent origination. This is the basis of the Buddha's awakening. The word Buddha simply means awakening. He was a human being, no different than any one of us. He began to understand why he suffered, why he got angry, sad, depressed, stressed, anxious. He began to understand the causal relationship of all phenomena. What that means very simply for all of us, regardless of where you come from or what you believe in or where you think you're going, your whole life is filled with things that happen. You react. More stuff happens. More reactions. That's it. This practice is simply learning what it's like to respond to something quietly, peacefully, still. Because for most of us, the way you responded to the last 20 minutes is quite different from how you respond to everything else that's happening throughout your day. So all we're working on is closing the gap where the way you feel now is closer to how you feel always. Just as driven, motivated, productive, successful. Whatever that means to you in your respective lives. But with a mind that's steady, clear, focused, distracted by nothing, disturbed by no one. This practice is not easy. It's not necessarily fun. It's not an escape, as often people think it is. It's direct perception into the present moment. And the present moment, as we know all too well, can be incredibly difficult, challenging, filled with chaos. And so this practice is simply learning to be okay with life as it arises. Once we stop trying to change, fix, control everything around us, we work on changing our mind and our reaction to the world around us, life gets a little simpler. It's not easy, because we've spent most of our lives trying to fix and control and change everything around us. Trying to create perfect situations, perfect scenarios. Just trying to build everything exactly how we think it should be. And that's exhausting. Once we set that down for a little bit and focus less on what things are actually like, as opposed to how we want them to be, then we can learn to appreciate each moment. Meditation is free, Buddhist practice is free. It's just sitting, breathing, becoming aware of what you think, what you say, and what you do. That's all. It's funny, there was a question last night, and even though I talk about this a lot and it comes up a lot, I don't think the question had ever really been asked this way. And it was around, as I always share what I was taught, think good thoughts, speak good words, and do good deeds. And so the question was, what does that mean? And it just kind of struck me because, like I said, a lot of the questions are the same, responses are the same but different, questions the same but different, etc. But I just had never heard a question asked specifically, like, what does it mean? And I gave my response, but it got me to really thinking, like, yeah, what does it mean to actually think good thoughts and speak good words and do good deeds? And not just what does it mean, but how does that actually impact your life? So we can say things like that. There's a lot of expressions and quotes in Buddhism and really in everything. But what does it actually mean to live by them, to abide by them, to bring them into your life? How does it change? And it's one thing to think good thoughts, speak good words, do good deeds on a T-shirt, but what is it like to carry it in your mind and in your heart? And when we do that, and when we practice that, things do really change. But it's hard. Because for much of our lives, we've not been thinking good thoughts and speaking good words and doing good deeds. In fact, as I always say, if you've ended up here, much of our lives have been the exact opposite of that. And so then we're trying to kind of reconcile and make peace with the fact, like, wow, we spent a lot of time thinking not good thoughts, speaking not good words, and doing not good deeds. But here we are. So pause there and I don't know, any of you want to share when you hear, think good thoughts, speak good words, do good deeds? What does that mean to you? How hard is that? How could it change things? So we'll use really the rest of our brief time tonight for questions, thoughts, discussion. But I guess my question just to the few of us who are here in the room is, if you want to share, what when you hear that, what does that actually mean to you? Yeah.
Thinking good thoughts. Part of the stuff. It's like thoughts kind of come and go, and why am I thinking this thought? Where did that randomness come from? Sometimes it's good, sometimes it's bad. And it's kind of like Monday morning quarterbacking that thought. It's like, well, it was just a thought. Just the way I think about it is doing good deeds. So you said, doing good deeds, just interacting with people, and you may have had, or I may have had a bad thought or a judgment or something like this that is not pure, and that's okay. But how am I going to physically respond to this or audibly respond to it? How am I going to interact with the person? I think it's the difference between the thought and the action on, at least from my experience, linking on the last one, maybe so.
The speaking good words.
Speaking of those, yes, yeah, kind of thoughts.
Yeah.
Actions, so think about it.
Yeah, for sure. And they all kind of happen pretty quickly. Very often, you know, we have a thought, we say something, and we do something. It's just, that's what's going on in our existence very often. The thoughts, the words, and the actions, and they happen quick. It can be hard to alter them, right? If we have not such a pleasant thought, not such pleasant words, but then can we, it's like we can still save the situation by not doing something terrible. At least that's happened for me a lot. Yeah. What else? What do you think? Yeah.
Well, like you said, it is hard. It is hard because, you know, tomorrow's Thanksgiving, and I'm not close to my family. I miss them a lot every day. But so they invited me to go over to the house for Thanksgiving, and I'm holding a resentment towards that because, and this is just in my mind. I got to work through it. You know, they wanted to see everyone together. But I'm like, well, why not Thanksgiving? You know, why not other days when I wanted to hang out with you guys? You know, one thing that I'm learning is, you know, I don't need Thanksgiving to be thankful. Especially where I've been at, I'm learning to be grateful every day. On that note, just this past weekend, it was our Thanksgiving dinner at the Rescue Mission. Something I was looking forward to. I did it last year and did it again. And I went there and put in my time, not expecting anything in return. I did notice some people, like, kind of like, oh, you know, I'm going to post this on social media. And I was like, well, it's the furthest thing from my mind. And I liked it. Next day, my body was beat. I was physically tired, carrying pans. I worked the kitchen. So, and I was like, well, you know what? Now I got to do it all over again, but now it's for the residents that live there. It's like, man, this is hard. Just like we were saying, like trying to live it every day, it's not easy. It's not.
Yeah, for sure. So will you go tomorrow?
Tomorrow I'm going to be here with you guys.
That wasn't my question.
And am I going to my family?
Yeah.
You know what? I'm going to go for a little bit.
Okay.
A little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah. At first my answer was no. I didn't want to, but you know what? Why am I going to hold ill will? Why am I going to think like that?
Sure.
See, what you just said, why think like that, you know? And I know my family, even though maybe they don't wanna say it or don't know how to say it, they wanna see that I'm doing better. And, yeah. Even if it's for a little bit, because I'll be here and then I do have to work at the rescue mission tomorrow.
So you got an excuse to get out.
Yeah, I'll be beaten.
You got an excuse to go late and leave early, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think, we look at, which you've heard a lot the last couple of years, but, the teachings of Donna of generosity and to give. And sometimes, whoever it is in your family, regardless of whatever resentments or grudges or whatever you may feel. And I 100% agree, like Thanksgiving, it's like, why just that? Why can't we be thankful every day, have gratitude every day? Of course. But with the practice of Dana, of giving, of generosity, sometimes it is situations like that where, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, I'm just from knowing you a bit and hearing what you just said, you might not even be going necessarily for you. But it sounds like you might be going to give them, whoever them are or is, an opportunity to be happy that you're there.
Yeah.
To see you there with them. Like you're giving them that gift. That's a beautiful practice of giving. You may hate it being there. You may in your head have the dialogue of all the thoughts of what you might want to say, and you just keep eating and stay quiet, and hopefully get out before you say anything harmful, But I think it's a beautiful gift that in that situation that you can give.
Thanks.
What else? Anything on the so Gene here said, as far as to think good thoughts, speak good words, do good deeds, at the simplest level, to me, it means to cause no harm. Yeah, for sure. That makes it real simple. I talked about this last night a bit, but the thinking good thoughts about ourselves, we're not causing harm to ourselves with the stories we tell ourselves. I should have done this, I hate myself, why this? And to self and others, if we're thinking good thoughts, speak good words, do good deeds, then we really are not causing any harm. Yeah. What else? Anyone else want to share when you hear think good thoughts, speak good words, do good deeds? What is that to you?
I struggle a lot with the thinking thoughts. It's, one thing is about like letting thoughts come and go, and it's an interesting question. I don't know.
Yeah.
The labeling and what is. Intuitively, I have a feeling like what is a good thought and things like that, but again, like my personal experience, like forcing thoughts. You hear this?
Yeah. No, you bring up a great point because from a meditation standpoint, the practice is to not label them, to just recognize them. This is a thought arising, who knows where they're coming from, they're just flying by. Thought, recognize, release, back to breath. Thought, recognize, release, back to breath. But, off the cushion or off the chair, off the meditation practice in our lives, while we can still recognize, we can still practice being present, we still have a crazy racing mind that is just flooded with thoughts. And on one hand, in theory, it's great to practice not labeling them. But I know just from personal experience, I spent so many years where my thoughts about myself and about others were very harmful. And I had to recognize that. Because if I didn't label that, right, even just thinking about thoughts about myself, if I didn't recognize that these thoughts I was having about myself were harmful to myself, I would have never had the awareness to recognize I should probably change the way I'm thinking about myself. Does that make sense? I grew up hating myself and being incredibly angry. So that was all just thoughts, had nothing to do with anybody else. I might have blamed other people and taken it out on other people. But what I learned from the Buddhist practice, these teachings, is that all of my thoughts are not coming from anyone else. They're just from me. So if my thoughts on repeat are, I'm not this enough, I'm not that enough, I need to change that. And so labeling it, for me, was necessary. Not to get stuck on it, not hung up on it, but to try to see it so you can try to transform it. And then, of course, the flip side is, well, okay, now I'm going to have kind. Now I'm still labeling it. Now I'm going to have nice thoughts about myself. I'm going to have kind thoughts about myself. But that was also important because that's what I needed. I needed to change from having the angry, hateful thoughts about myself to having kind and loving thoughts about myself. And I needed to do that for for years. And then ultimately, for me then, it was a practice of neither, whatever my thoughts are about myself, none of them are true. They're all just an illusion. So at this point, I don't really care what thoughts I have about myself anymore because they don't impact me. But for a long time, it did. That makes sense? I don't know if that brings up anything for you, or anybody really. But.
Yeah.
I saw you smiling and nodding, so I figured there was some words coming after that.
No, I just, that's, coming here, like, those stuff, to me, they good thoughts, say good words, you can use them, and I'm just trying to do that every single day. One thing that resonates with me coming in here is, you joke, but in seriousness, coming here is the best thing that you can do for the people that you love. Because that narrative in my head for so long is what got me so, like, you were angry, or,
Yeah.
issues with substance abuse, and it just kept layering on. And so for me, it's just a constant, it's daily, it's like a recalibrating of I want to, like, go out to the world and do all these wonderful things, but for me right now, it's just focusing on myself and getting that narrative in my head right. To love myself first, because that's where it's got to start. Like, all these good intentions of wanting to do great things, like, to me, that's just window dressing until I actually look inside and start to really change that for myself. So that's, for me, what it means. It's just that personal connection. Thinking those good thoughts up, there's a negative thought. Why are you having, like, what's going on there?
Yeah.
And don't judge, like you say, don't judge your practice. That's super hard too. Like, I do that all the time. Like, even in meditation, it's like, why are you doing that? Focus, stop it. I'm not stopping to do this. I'm just being in the moment. So, I don't know. That's where I'm at with it.
Yeah, and it's it can be maybe a little bit misleading is the right word, confusing. But the teachings on non-self and people talk about almost as if when we read non-self or read impermanence, it can often be interpreted in a way that we're not here, that we don't matter, and that's not the case. Like we matter. The great Zen Master Dogen would say you must get to know the self before you can get rid of the self, and that's kind of where my comments are initially coming from. Is that teaching that we have to get to know this. Like, what is this that's making me feel good and making me feel bad? What is this that's bringing me joy? What is this that's bringing me pain? What are my, cravings and desires? What are my aversions? Like, getting to know that is super important on any spiritual journey. And that's not always fun, but really important.
Is that equanimity? Am I saying that right?
Yeah, in a way it can be, yes. I mean, I think the practice of equanimity, and you look at the 4 foundations of mindfulness, loving kindness, compassion, joy, and equanimity, to me, the way I view and interpret Buddhist teachings on equanimity is to really be steady and stable with whatever arises. So, for me, the practice, as I just mentioned as an example, was, early on, all the negative thoughts about myself, and then I just practiced telling myself good things and good things and good things, and then eventually it was just like, whatever I'm telling myself, it doesn't change me. To me, that's the practice of equanimity. That I'm not affected If I'm going through my day and all of a sudden I have some negative thought about myself, like, oh, you're such an idiot, you're so stupid, or why did you think that, or why did you do that? Like, I'll just laugh. Like, what an idiot I am for having such a stupid thought. Like, they're just thoughts. It means nothing. As long as I don't say anything, as long as I don't do anything on it. So to not be affected by so much. You know, that years ago I saw it, I wish I could remember where I saw it or how to retell it, but I saw it was around the teaching of equanimity, and it was using a tree as like a metaphor. It was kind of displaying like the massive branch of a tree, or the root of the tree, as the wind blows, doesn't move. But you get, as it goes up and the branches are smaller and the leaves and all that kind of stuff, as the wind blows, those are drastically flying around in the wind. The teaching I saw was much more beautiful than what I'm describing, but that was the point, that what we're working on with the practice of equanimity is to be the root, the trunk, root. No, the roots are underground, right? So, well, I guess those would work too. But to be the trunk of the tree that as the wind blows, and the wind is the chaos of life, that it just doesn't faze you, it doesn't impact you, it doesn't bother you. You just observe it. So, the equanimity is tough because we're triggered so easily. Yeah. What else? Anything? Think good thoughts, speak good words, do good deeds. Or anything else for that matter. We've got a few more minutes, so any just general thoughts or comments or questions? Just kind of open up for that.
How many minutes?
What you got? You got like a 12-minute question or what?
Death.
Go ahead.
I'm just curious about death now.
Oh, death? Yeah. Curious about death in the afterlife.
How many minutes?
Yeah, how many minutes, right? Well, that's better. Usually that comes up with like 2 minutes left, you know? It's like, usually I'll say we got one final closing question and somebody will ask about, you know, that. Death and afterlife. Well, let me ask you this first. What is, just to understand where you're coming from, how much of any kind of Buddhist background, knowledge, understanding, is this all brand new to you? Have you been around in a while? Where are you at with that?
A little bit in college,
Okay,
I would say
brand new. But to understand, do you have an understanding, I guess I should say that, well, I'll just say this. In India, at the time of the Buddha, 2,500 years ago, they all believed in rebirth. So if you weren't aware of that, that's the first place to start. Is to understand that at that time, rebirth, what you call rebirth, reincarnation, continuation of consciousness, you'll hear it talked about different ways, primarily from different cultures around Buddhism. But the Buddha didn't like invent rebirth. That's what everybody back then believed in. They had Hindu gods and goddesses, and they all believed that there would just be this endless cycle of rebirth until you freed yourself from the cycle of rebirth. If you walked up to somebody on the street then and said, hey, you got one life and then you're going to heaven or hell, they would have thought you were a little crazy. Fast forward 2,500 years to today, and our Western worlds, for the most part, we grew up believing in heaven or hell, right? I even said it, afterlife. And if you go up to the average Western person today and say there's a rebirth, they think you're a little crazy. So it's completely opposite of what it was back then. So keep in mind that when the Buddha was teaching, he was teaching to an audience of people, to everybody, that they all thought they were going to be reborn. They weren't focused on like, I just want to be, this isn't totally fair to say, but they weren't focused on, I just want to be peaceful and happy and get through my day without, cutting somebody off on the road. They wanted to, and what the Buddha was teaching was to free themselves from the cycle of birth and death. That literally, the teachings were there to end suffering. But based on the actual kind of fundamental teachings, there's only one way to end suffering. Which is what? If the Buddha said, once we are born, we will experience suffering, based on a culture that believed in rebirth, only way to no longer suffer would be
To be unborn.
to not be born. Totally different context. Now, I'm not obviously not going to. I can't sum this up for you. I mean, I'll sum it up, but I can't give you the depth of it in 7 minutes. But they were trying to no longer be reborn, to get off of the wheel of samsara, the cycle of rebirth. And you can Google 12 links of dependent origination, or 12 links of origination. And it's talking about if you remove any one of those links, it's like a chain, it all falls apart. So these were the way to no longer be reborn. Now, fast forward to today, practicing Buddhism, learning about Buddhism, believing in rebirth or not is irrelevant, right? 90% of the people that come to a place like this, they all believe in heaven or hell, still. Or they grew up thinking that that's there. If you believe in heaven or hell, what determines where you go for the most part?
A mystical creature at a gate.
Say it again.
A mystical creature at a gate.
Good answer. I've never heard that one. But aside from the mystical creature at a gate, what is the mystical creature at a gate looking at you? What are they basing where you go on?
Salvation, maybe?
What you did,
Oh, wait, yeah.
right? So if this mystical creature at the gate is going to look at you and decide which way you go, they're going to look at what your actions were in your life. What are Buddhist teachings concerned with? What your actions are in your life. And I always introduce this just to get people to understand that whether you believe in rebirth or reincarnation or not has nothing to do with practicing what the Buddha taught. In fact, if you are someone who believes in heaven, if you actually think good thoughts, speak good words, and do good deeds, you got a better chance of getting into heaven. Right? And less chance of getting into hell. So, as far as rebirth from the Buddhist standpoint, yeah, that's what Buddhism taught, is that they also, and this is based on Indian cosmology, they also have heaven realms and hell realms. They exist in Hindu, Vedic, Buddhist teachings as well. And the heavenly realms and the hell realms are just as bad as our Western hell realms. Either way, you don't want to go there, right? There was a monk out in Taiwan, he taught life and death studies. And what he taught was that at the moment of death, and in Buddhist culture, I don't know if you've ever heard this, but it's very common when the body dies that the physical body is not touched for a period of time. It's left alone. Because they want time for the consciousness, and different cultures will have it differently, but they want time for the consciousness to actually leave the body before we start messing with the physical body. But the teaching is that Tibetan Book of the Dead is a great one to read as well around a lot of this stuff. Tibetans really get into the Bardo stage and the teachings on reincarnation quite a bit. But the teaching that I got was that when the consciousness leaves the body, it then, and I was thinking of it like just like a little balloon floating in the sky. It's my crazy head just imagining like this little consciousness float like a little balloon, and inside the balloon is our little consciousness. And the teaching was that at some point, usually on the 7th day of a 49-day period, that at some point during these 49 days, this consciousness, which is floating in the balloon, that's my interpretation, that you have sperm, you have egg, they come together, you have the consciousness, it's like, yo, there we go, and they go in. And that's where birth begins. Consciousness, sperm, egg, life. That's where it starts. Now, that consciousness, collection of karma, they call it Laya Vijnana, the collection of karma, collection of actions, is endless. It's not mine, it's not Jeff's, I don't own it, it's not me, right? Everything I've done in this life is not Jeff. It's just stuff this consciousness has done. And this consciousness has been around for endless time, and it'll be around for endless more time. But it's not me. I have, for lack of better words, control over for what this consciousness does right now. And I'm pretty sure whatever my consciousness did before it got into this physical form was a lot of bad stuff. And I've had to deal with that. And then I did lots of more bad stuff and created more stuff. And now the practice is, I don't want to leave whatever physical form this consciousness goes into next, right? I'm sitting here thinking like, what the hell did they leave me with? You know? And I don't want to leave this for some poor human or whatever in the future to have to deal with the shit I've done. So I'm trying to change the direction. Does that make sense?
I wouldn't say, it's gonna take a little bit of severity.
Yeah, makes sense is the wrong question, right? It's the wrong choice of words, but because even everything I just said doesn't make sense to me at all. Last thing I'll say on rebirth, reincarnation, continuation of consciousness is that, and for me, I always like to share this, you know, all the Buddhist teachings that I've looked at and learned and studied and practiced, like 95% of them, they just make sense to me. Logical, practical, simple, direct, and I think he was brilliant. Because there's 5%, a lot of it around this kind of rebirth type stuff that doesn't make any sense to me just from how I was raised, I'm just like, hey, what do I know? So I'm just kind of like, I'll throw that 5% that doesn't make sense to me, I just throw it into the other 95% and just kind of go with it from there. But that's just me, you know, because I don't think this stuff will ever make sense to a certain extent, you know. That balloon thing is just like, just some fun story I tell myself.
That part makes sense.
Oh, great. I'm glad that I, connected on some level with the balloon thing. All right, so I'm going to close on that unless anyone else has any final thoughts. All right, so we'll join palms. And the benefit of this practice be shared with all beings in all directions. May all beings be at peace. May all be free from suffering. And before you all scatter out, we have a few announcements from I forgot to look, are you wearing the nicest Dharma Dome host badge?
I am the nicest.
There you
yes.
go.
Yeah. Absolutely. Hello, everybody. I am Stephen. I'm tonight's host. We opened the Dharma Bottom Temple 17 years ago to introduce Buddhist practice to those who show up. Those who lead are not nuns, monks, gurus, masters, or teachers, and are not looking for students. They're simply practitioners sharing their interpretation of the practice. Every night we have different classes led by different people from various Buddhist traditions. We have a recovery sangha that meets several times a week for everyone, for anyone with addiction, and our food redistribution program is every Thursday at 5 p.m. We have classes and programs every day, and everything we offer is always free. The full schedule is on our website and also posted in the entryway above the shoe rack. We have a lending library. If you see a book you like, feel free to borrow it and bring it back whenever we're done with it. This week, there is a Thanksgiving Day food redistribution program from 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. There's also a special Amazon wish list with items needed for this event. And if you are interested in volunteering or donating, you can check out our website for more info. And for this evening, please straighten your seat or cushion before you head out. And if a couple of you could help close the windows and latch the windows, that would be great and helpful. And thank you for being here, and we wish you well, and we'll see you all again.
Thanks, Gene. Thank you all. Thanks, Gene. Good night.